I love it. I
Hey,
love
hey.
it. Welcome, everybody. It's
Hello.
our favorite time of every month, I guess, when we all get together. And now I can hear the
I can
echo
hear
again.
it.
All right, it's not Brian
It's
because
all over.
Brian was on mute. I'm, I'm gonna I'm gonna go crazy if I can't figure out who. Well, you can't all mute yourself.
Okay.
It's like we had to figure out who the culprit is. So we know it was Brian. So Brian, take yourself off mute.
All right.
All right. So I know we don't hear it, and
I'll
Blake's the
go
only
on
one
mute. I'll go
on mute.
mute.
All right, Blake's back off of mute. I feel like anybody. Uh,
Is Blake moving?
I think it's Blake.
Yeah. Is it?
Oh,
I
it's
do have
frozen.
my speaker on. My headphones weren't working.
Yo, no shit, man. All right.
I thought you gave me this fancy microphone. I thought you said it could stop all of this. Hold on.
Golly. Well,
Look
all you
at
do
me
is
getting
just turn
blamed for Blake.
just turn the volume down a little bit, and you'll be okay.
Blake, I'm on
didn't wanna
like
listen to you
my
guys anyway,
I'm like
so-
on my original microphone, jerry rigged over here, and I'm not echoing. I'm
About
How's
now,
this
is it
happen?
still doing it? Or
No, I think you're okay.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're okay now.
that's amazing. But I'm not
Yeah,
surprised.
It is. what it
You
is.
guys knew
You
it
know-
wasn't me. Come on.
You know what's crazy is like we all were like giving him the benefit of the doubt. No one was actually blaming Blake. Everyone was going after Brian.
I know. You guys are just quick to pile on.
I'm still not convinced it's not Brian. I don't know. The jury's out, in my opinion.
It's got to be unanimous verdict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Must be. Well, we were streaming live on Instagram. I think it just died already. Man, this platform's just all kinds
Ooh,
of
how did you
full
get
of
on
issues.
stream
So
on
that's
Instagram? I
content
thought they
owned
blocked
by
that.
RTV.
So StreamYard introduced the ability to start streaming to Instagram now, but as we can tell, it's not working very well. It says we're having trouble. If you
Yeah,
hit on
that-
Instagram, this isn't expected. If not,
Yeah,
this-
Instagram blocks all that stuff.
Well, they opened it up, so that's what you basically have.
Really?
Yeah, so you can get a stream key now, and you can stream to your Instagram, but it's definitely it's got
A
some
work
bugs
in
to
progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best way to put it. So, all right, well, y'all ready to get it rolling? See, you already said it's like got kicked off Instagram, so it didn't take long. It sucks. Oh well, it had like 65 people on it before it was just the music, but it is what it is. All right, we'll go ahead and end that live video over there because that ain't gonna rescue itself. Well, y'all ready to get going? I know Blake's the only one who doesn't know what the topic is, so it'll be a fun little thing to kind of dive into.
I know what it is. I just, I didn't see the normal write up. I read it in the show notes, so we're all set.
All right,
Got a lot of fun in this one.
I'm excited for it. I think it'll be good, only because I think you're part of the reason why this was even happening anyway. So we'll give some.
As that should always be the case. So
Yeah.
thank you.
All right,
welcome everyone. I'm
go ahead, run with it. All right, so what we'll do, I'm gonna get a sync, clap with the camera, and we'll get rolling. Here we go. Hey everybody, it is Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of Bourbon, but more importantly, this is Bourbon Community Roundtable number 90. Everybody, heyo.
hey, and it's Super Bowl week.
It's getting
And it's
close.
Super Bowl week. Is it Super
Yeah,
Bowl week, or is it like we just get to watch Taylor Swift a little bit more on TV kind of week?
I'll be there in
No.
person, so I'll be hanging out.
You will.
Hanging with
Yeah.
Taylor.
Tired of Taylor Swift hijacking NFL. NFL was perfectly fine before that. So
Oh, don't you be one of those naysayers now.
They just released that they had a 9-10% bump of female viewers to NFL games. So I don't know.
Surprised it's not more.
till they break up.
I know I was kind of surprised by that too, actually. And
Well,
then
hey-
then it's a song, right? When they break
Oh,
up.
it's a whole album for this one.
It might be. But Fred, why don't you give a plug for what you're doing in Vegas?
Yeah, so I've got I've now doing an annual Super Bowl party, or excuse me, big game party called Big Game Bourbon. And we have the foundation room in Mandalay Bay where you can see the whole strip. And we bring, a bunch of celebrities come, football players. I'll have Charles Woodson on the stage with me. Rick Harrison will be on the stage with me. Graham McTavish and a few other people. But we got like the RSVP list and just like a bunch of A-list football players coming and celebrities. And so we're raising money for the charity Forgotten Not Gone, which is a fundraiser, or which is a charity group that helps veterans, who are struggling with suicide. So that's something very near and dear to my heart. And then I'll be there all week. I've got 3 red carpets I'm doing. I'm doing the Madden Bowl red carpet, the NFL culinary kickoff, and the Maxim party. I get invited to the Maxim party.
Whoa.
Look at you.
Tailgate right before the game with the NFL players. And then I'm actually going to the Super Bowl. So stoked.
Awesome. Well,
The only one killing it in this panel here.
I was about to say,
Minnick.
don't forget about us. If you need some C-list or maybe D-list level podcast people to join you next time, I think you got 5 more volunteers down here. Listen, it's going to be in New Orleans next year, and I'd love for everyone to be there. Maybe we could even do the roundtable there. But it's like I'm already planning next year. Like this is, I don't know what it is, man, but there's just something special about doing something around the Super Bowl. It's incredible. I've never really thought. I mean, I just know the Super Bowl, just how big it is. I've never even fathomed touching doing anything with it, just because it's like, well, Bud Light owns all that sponsorship, so I'm not even going to try even mess with it. Oh, it's everywhere. I mean, and the thing is, it takes over the entire town. And there's so many events, and and the thing is, like, everyone here will appreciate this, like the amount of work that goes into getting allocated bourbon at an event like this. It's incredible. It's a lot of work, and fortunately, we've got a great team. It's been, and the distributors in Vegas have actually been really, really, really helpful for us. So I'm sure getting a bunch of allocated bourbon in Vegas was pretty easy anyway. Oh, no. We got a bottle of Pappy, and I swear to God, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career.
Sure, there's plenty of smoke wagon.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. No issues there.
That helped out him being there.
For sure. All right, well, let's quickly go around and give a quick round introduction. So, of course, I'm Kenny. That's here. You just heard Fred, and then Ryan's here as well.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah, glad to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's start off from our bottom left of the screen here. So, Blake, go ahead and give yourself a little bit of intro.
This is Professor Clump.
Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick. I think did we lose him?
I think he turned his volume too far down.
Blake, can you hear us?
On.
Okay.
On the Brian.
Oh, yeah, he's gone.
So, right. Brian with Bourbon Justice and Sipping Corn. Happy to be on number 90.
90 episodes in, and Blake still has problems.
May have made them all, but he's been comic relief on everyone.
I don't know how this always happened. We sent him microphones. We sent him cables. We even sent him a tech repair person to fix it down to Florida, and it's still not working.
Oh, man. Can't make this stuff up.
I can't. All right, Eric, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I'm Eric from Breaking Bourbon, currently tech problem free.
Good. Let's hope we all remain that way. Oh, all right. Here, he's joining back in again. Let's see how well this is going to work. And what do we got, Blake?
Back. Can you hear me?
We can't. Just go.
All right. It's a good thing we only have one topic tonight.
Time for my intro.
No, go ahead, Blake.
Hold on one second.
You realize I
Forgot
got to
who he
edit all this
was
shit nowadays,
momentarily.
right? God
Oh,
dang.
it's so easy to edit.
See, I had it good, and you threw me off on the echo thing, and now I'm trying to
So it's Kenny's fault, Blake.
say something one more time.
Is it Kenny's fault?
Can you hear me?
Must not be.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Where?
Must be the microphone you sent him, Kenny.
Yeah, it's not the
I'm
microphone.
gonna fix
It's
this.
a
I
tech
can't hear
person.
anybody, but I'm gonna give it a pause, and so then you can cut all this out. So, Blake from Bourboner and Steelbox, good to be back here tonight on the 90th Roundtable. So, thanks for having me, and can't wait to dive into these topics.
Good. We're going to edit all that out. All right, let's go ahead and let's get into this. So we only have really one topic tonight, and it's funny. Well, actually, we're not going to edit that out, but this is only because actually Blake kind of had a little bit of a tie to this. So we actually interviewed Sean from Pinhook. It was a couple months ago, and he actually posed a question to us, and he actually talked to Blake about it. And I said, you know what? I don't know if I can say that answer. I said, I'm going to save this one for a roundtable. And the question was, and it kind of posed to me because as producers, as consumers, what is the right time to put an age statement on a label? Now, we all know legally that anything under 4 years has to adorn an age statement. And this can come in a bunch of different forms. We've seen it over the years. Some people will be like, aged in new oak for 36 months or whatever it is to kind of make it sound like it's not 3 years old. Even back in the days, if you look at a lot of those beam decanters, a lot of those said 48 months, I think like 60 months, like they were a little bit all over the place. But those were the back in the days that, yeah, you had age statements on something that was, 4 years, 6 years and stuff like that too. So one of the things that kind of sparked this is looking at not only from a producer side, but as well as a consumer side. And I think for the nature of this particular conversation, we should probably focus more on the consumer side to figure out in our head what is something that we look towards. Is there something that doesn't have to have an age statement? If it is going to have an age statement, at what point does it matter? Now, I know that's a loaded question, and I'm sure Fred probably has some background or history that he wants to throw into this before we can get going. Is there any kind of anecdotes that you want to drop in here, Fred?
And a prior career as an age validator.
No, actually, age statements is one of those things that they were not always there. Like Bottle and Bond was was always the big thing, but Bottle and Bond would kind of give you a de facto age statement, right? Because you would have the year it was distilled and the year it was bottled. So age statements, have always been kind of a play for showing quality until the distiller has to, meet stock or meet demand, in which case then they're bottling to taste. And really, I would credit Maker's Mark with being the company that made it cool to have like a super premium approach without having an age statement. So, age statements are not something there's history there, and people would mark it like 20 summers old or something like that in the 1800s. But, for the most part, it's always been about brands and flavor profiles.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things that we've seen in recent and especially modern bourbon is that if let's roll back before modern bourbon. When I say modern bourbon, we're talking late 90s, 2000s era. But prior to that, I mean, seeing something that was 10, 12, 15, 18 years on the shelf, it wasn't too common. I mean, that was something that was really looked at export markets and Japanese markets and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff that we drink, especially when we're drinking Dusties, I mean, you have them, and these are 4 to 5 year old bourbons, and most of them did not adorn an age statement whatsoever. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of pivot this discussion a little bit, and I'll kind of put it out to you all. From a consumer standpoint, let's think about the modern day bourbon drinker. what do you think is the attractiveness of seeing the age statement? I think the first thing that I already saw on the chat was like, why don't all brands just put an age statement on everything they do? So kind of talk about, from your perspective as a consumer, sort of like, when do you want to see that age statement start coming on there and how important it is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is a consumer perspective, but I go back and forth on this one. I'm somebody said in the chat, and I always felt this way of, oh, I just want as much information as possible. But the reality is, something can be really good at 4 years old and something can be really bad at 20 years old. And a lot of times you almost just have to taste it, and a lower age statement, no matter what, is going to deter people from purchasing something, from trying something if they see it. It's like, I don't know. It's only 5 years old. I'll wait. And that could be a really great product. I can't say the brands, but I've had people who rant and rave about a bottle and it's non-age stated, and I have an idea of how old it is, and then they'll talk bad about another bottle because it's too young. But the NAS bottle was actually even younger than the bottle they passed. And it's like, well, that number on the label convince you one way or the other. So now I think we see brands using that. With if it's a super old orphan barrel release or something, they're putting that on there. Um, and not all the time is something that's 20 years old going to be great. So it's got its pros and its cons. My opinion on this has definitely changed over the years. I wanted to know the age statement, but as you taste more and more, you just realize like it just doesn't always correlate. And had great stuff at younger ages and terrible stuff at younger ages, and vice versa. But at Sealbox, this is our 1800-day-old bourbon that we're going to be releasing. We're doing days in linear moon cycles as well. That's our new age statements. So
I like that. Moon phases.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta. The only reason there were age statements for the most part was because bourbon was in the shitter, and it was like the only way, to market it, to compete against Scotch and whatnot, because Scotch was having an age statement, and you really didn't see, probably our fact checkers here will, but I don't remember seeing age statements till probably like the mid to late '90s, early 2000s, and that kind of resurrected bourbon because you had all those awesome, 12-year Elijah Craigs. You had Evan Williams at 7 years. Beam, or the Beam Black Label was an 8-year, I think, which was fantastic. But before then, you really didn't see age statements, and then bourbon caught popularity. Age statements dropped off. Some will say, the quality dropped off. I'm not so sure. I've had some amazing Elijah Craig barrel picks that were 8 years old, 9 years old, that are just as good as some 12-year-old barrels. But I, I was in the camp because I grew up on age stated bourbon that I was blinded by that. It had to have at least be at a minimum of 6. But when I was really getting into it, I really liked 8, 10, 12. But at the same time, I would buy Weller 107 and Elmer T, which didn't have an age statement, and Blanton's doesn't have an age statement, which the Blanton's that everybody loves and chases is a 6-year-old product. E.H. Taylor is a 6-year-old product. All these unicorns, quote unquote unicorns that people are chasing are on unage stated, and they're, 6 years or younger. And I think there's amazing products that do have 4-year-old age statements. And unfortunately, I think people won't try it if you put the 4-year age statement on, or somebody like Still Lawson, who's 2 years old, a product that if there was a big 2 on there and not a 10, people would be like, oh, that's young grap. I ain't drinking that shit. And so it's just a marketing thing. It's a consumer comfort thing. I mean, ideally, bourbon is probably, in my experience, is best between 5 years to 12 years. After 12, to me, it gets kind of bitter, oaky, and tannic. I mean, obviously, there's exceptions when you age it on the lower floors. You have, like these one-off releases that are good. But for the most part, I mean, I remember going into Heaven Hill and they were like dumping out Elijah Craig 18 year into Evan Williams Black because it wasn't good enough to be Elijah Craig 18 because it was so bitter, tannic, and so a lot of barrels that don't even see the life of day get put into 4-year-old products because they're not good enough to meet that quality expectations. And so this is a fascinating discussion that I could go on a soapbox, but I'll let somebody else comment on it.
You
So
know,
we
I
can keep going.
remember the when the age statements started dropping. It was the Beam Black Label. That was the first one to go, and I want to say that was 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And that was the first one to go, and then a bunch of others would follow. Weller would follow, Knob Creek, and then would come back. There'd Elijah Craig. I mean, that just kind of like broke my heart when Elijah Craig, dropped its age statement. But I remember talking to, David Wondrich, who's, an incredible cocktail historian. We were having this conversation at the time, very similar to this one. And he made the comments. He's like, if age statements did not matter, then they would never put them on in the first place. And we were talking about it in the context of the spin that distillers make when they were dropping an age statement, and that just kind of always resonated with me. So I think age statements definitely do matter, and they matter because they can help you understand whiskey at a certain age. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good or whatever, but from a production standpoint, you're kind of beholden to that age range. And I've had incredible conversations with distillers over the years who hate age statements because they have to always change their labels, and they always, kind of like you were saying, Ryan, like there's tons of 8-year-old Elijah Craig that's 10 times better than the 12-year-old. I mean, 10 years ago, it would have been hard for me to admit that, but today I can fully say that. And so, like, if you want to be a distiller and you're like, you want to put out this 8-year-old product, but you're beholden to that 10-year-old, man, there's some, you have some real, you have to make some compromises there. So I see both sides, but for me, that sweet spot is between 8 and 12 years old. That's my favorite age range for whiskey. If you have a bourbon and it's at least 8 years old, you should be proud of that and put an age statement on there, even if it's like a back label handwritten or something. But 8 years old is to me, that's kind of like hitting 30 home runs in a major league season. That's a big deal.
I really like what Ryan said about the brands that don't put it at all. So that tells me that age statements do mean something, because I really don't think that Elijah Craig E.H. Taylor or Elmer T. Lee at what used to be maybe 8, or Blanton's at 4 to 6 right now. No one's going to buy that if it had a number on it. So I think it's significant in both ways. And I agree with Fred too. Once you hit 8 or 9, that tends to be when you see it coming back on. I think that's when it hits as significant. And I don't think you see it between 4 and 8 or 9, other than the couple 7s that come out. And I think that's really telling. I mean, there's got to be market studies behind that, that you got to know Sazerac's been doing for why they don't put age statements on there, or why when they continue, or when they take it off of Very Old Barton, they leave the numeral 6, or they do the same thing with Old Charter. They left the numeral 8, because those mean, especially with the Old Charter, that's going to mean something, and to the consumer, even if it doesn't say the words aged around it.
That's maybe deceptive, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it happened. We'll see. There's a class action that'll maybe decide whether it's deceptive.
I like to add too. It's a numbers game too. I think a lot of people came into bourbon, between now and the last 8-10 years, kind of when the boom bubble started. And that's when we saw a lot of age statements disappear. So there probably is a lot of people drinking bourbon now that when they started, a lot of the bottles they were drinking didn't have age statements. So I think naturally you start to see numbers, and you always associate a higher number being just better. And then kind of some of that going back off of that is people just seeing Scotch and that sort of thing, and seeing the higher ages with Scotch, and just finding a correlation between the two, and like, oh, an older Scotch is better, so I guess that apply that same thing to bourbon. But also, I think a lot of these people too that have come into bourbon during the last 10 years, let's say, they probably had a lot of experiences with craft, and a lot of the crafts were 2 years, 4 years old, and they potentially had bad experiences. So they just automatically associate youth being bad, even though, smaller distilleries now, craft, have come a long way. And, I can name a number of great smaller distilleries at 5 years old that I would totally recommend. So it is, we're all kind of saying a number isn't everything.
Yeah, Eric, you brought up a good thing about craft, and Fred, for some reason, I think you had said this once before. So let's say you are a craft producer, and you finally have a 4-year-old product, and you're so excited to release it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a death blow to put 4 years on it, or is it something you should be proud of because you finally have something that's 4 years old that you could release, even though it could be amazing? But is that stigma there that it's like, I'm 4 years, I don't know about this. You might have some magic in those barrels, but you know what? I see all the stuff that's 8, 12, 20, and I don't know any better, but I just know older means better.
Well, first of all, good memory for remembering that. That was in the context of bottled and bond. And, to be bottled and bond, it must be at least 4 years old. And that is such an important designation for American whiskey, both from a historical perspective, but also like the modern movement of people understanding what bottled and bond means. And you actually can tap into a market of people who want to taste and, explore it. So that if you're a craft distiller and you can reach bottled and bond status, that's huge. And you should be proud of that. And 4 years old, that's the time when the whiskey may not be as good as 6 years old. Maybe it is fantastic, but it should not have the green notes anymore. It should not have any of those kind of like licking a fence post or moldy kind of corn notes. It shouldn't have any of those notes that you would get, but you can often get between 1 and 2 years old. If they're decent whiskey makers, it just should be there. And if they're pot still, you can get a lot of oily kind of notes in there that can really be quite beautiful. I love 4-year-old product. There's a lot of craft whiskeys out there that make 4-year-old product that I love. I always bring them up, but Spirits of French Lick is a good example. And I know that it's particular to my palate. I love that flavor profile, but I think someone should be proud of a 4-year-old bourbon when they come out. Jim Beam, not so much. Heaven Hill, not so much. But if you're a small distiller and you have a capacity of less than 300 barrels a year, slap that 4-year-old age statement on there. Be proud of it.
Well, there's things you can do to make, as far as production wise, to make it flavorful at 4 years. You can cut the entry proof, way down. I've found that a lot of lower entry proofs taste better at a younger age, like Finger Lakes being one of them, New Riff being one of them, Michter's, I would assume that their flagships are 4 to 6 years old. And two, there's so many different variables. Like the big 6 distilleries, they're basically making 125 proof commodity style grain bourbon, and they're relying on the barrel to create most of their flavor profile. Whereas craft producers can do different grain quality or grain types, different regions, terroir, they can do different entry proofs. They can do different yeast strains, fermentation techniques. They can do, column still, pot still. There's all these different techniques that you can make it taste good at 4 years old. But the big 6 kind of in their production style method lean to a very clean, corn-based distillate, but where they rely on the barrel to influence the flavor. And obviously, the more age you have in the barrel, the more flavor it's going to get.
You know what's interesting about that, Ryan, is that we're kind of like, if you look at the craft distiller movement, they're about on first base in terms of where they can be as an industry as a whole. In 10 years, I cannot wait to see what a 20-year-old Finger Lakes bourbon tastes like. Because I tasted them in 2010 and I was blown away. I did a big story on them in tasting panel, and just to see their progression where they have gone over the years and how good their whiskey is. I mean, that's a great example, but just imagine in when they're able to release a 20-year-old age stated product, how awesome that's going to be.
Which, let's take a bet. Who's going to be the first craft distiller to hit the 20-year mark? I mean, Finger Lakes is up there. They put out an 11-year bourbon, I think.
But here's the
Yeah.
thing: does an age statement matter? And here's we just talked about this. It's like
It sounds like it does.
when you get to 20 years, though, like, is the
Well,
whiskey
from
any
a sales
good?
perspective, I think it absolutely matters, but if we say from a pure profile standpoint, I don't think it does, but I guess that's a different topic. But no, I'd say 100%. It's always going to make it. It's going to move faster if there's a higher age statement on there. We could write a review that says this tastes like dirt and charcoal, and it's 30 years old, and somebody's going to buy it.
Unless it's wild turkey, then it sits.
Well, no, because they even got Brian on the diamond release. So I'm
Yeah. Which by the way, I don't understand the whole wild turkey farm, why those bottles sit. But the one thing I do want to say is Ryan mentioned the lower barrel entry proof. Historically, those are the bottles. Those are the brands that have lower barrel entry proofs that can, where the age statement matters at an older. Like I want it. Like if these bourbons are going to be released 20, 25 years old, I want to find out their barrel entry proof, because it's a 25-year-old, 125 barrel entry proof. That thing's going to be rough. If it was a 103 to 110, that thing could be silky. It could be beautiful. So, and that's wheated bourbons have always gone in the barrel at lower proof. So that's why those tend to do well at older ranges. And let's not forget the reason why we even talk about like older bourbons in the first place is because Pappy got a near perfect score in the late 90s and kind of changed the game entirely for age stated whiskey. So, I mean, Kenny, to go back to your original question, does it matter? I think it absolutely does matter when you get up in those older tiers. It absolutely does matter. Under 6 years old in terms of the general consumer, no, unless it's like a craft product. I don't think it does matter as much. For me, I just saw a Watershed rye, 6 years. I can't wait to taste that. A 6-year-old rye, huge for me. Like I get excited about 6-year-old rye. 6-year-old bourbon, maybe I'm excited, maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
See, what's interesting is like I get more excited about someone who has a really good product at a younger age than someone that's at like 10 years old. Like, I don't know. I like someone like Still Austin or Ben Holiday, brands like that are like freaking amazing at a younger age, New Riff. I'm like, what are they doing to like that's exciting to me that you're doing something besides relying on the barrel to give it flavor. You're doing something interesting. And that's more exciting to the category to me than just throw those barrels in there and let them sit forever.
And I agree. And I think it's got to be the lower entry proof, right? I mean, that's got to be such a key component of why these are coming out differently. And there's a little echo.
Well, I know Grant over at Chattanooga Whiskey, he talks a lot about just like getting some of those flavors into the whiskey through the grains. So that's why they're big on malted grains and all these different types of malts, whether it's corn or high malted barley, all of those things where we typically get with a little more spice or a little more like vanilla and all that, and they're pulling that from the grain. So I think there's a lot to it. And yeah, I mean, obviously, Wilderness Trail also, whenever they came out with their 8 year, I thought it was fantastic, and I thought it drank like a 10 to 12 year easy, where it had a lot of great leathery notes and some of the like dry oak spice, which I expect. But even some people were like, 8 year, I'd like to see a 10-year-old as well. I'm like, okay, when does it stop though? Like,
That's a very good
when
point.
when do we just say, okay, like this isn't good anymore? We should have stopped at 8 years, and it's hard to reverse that, which I think is also part of the problem. And tougher for smaller distillers, but the big guys, if a Four Roses barrel gets rejected at 23 years old, it's going into the yellow label and getting blended with, 2,000 other barrels, and you'd never see it. But for smaller guys, it's really tough to do that.
Yeah, and you make a really good point, only because it's like here's the hardest thing. I remember when New Riff came on the scene. New Riff makes a big wave. People latch on to it, you know, 4 years old. I mean, when we were picking barrels, it was like 4 years in a day, right? Like it was like just there, and they were pumping out barrels left and right. And then you had the naysayers out there who were like, well, I wonder when this will be good at 8, or I want to try this at 6 or 8. And I'm like, it's perfectly great at 4. And so you're right, Blake. Like, at what point do people just sit there and say, like, okay, now it's 8? Be like, well, I really kind of want to see it at 12. I think there's just a stigma that's been built in the current modern bourbon drinker that automatically just thinks that a higher age equates to a better tasting whiskey or better value or something like that. And there's just like somehow that wall needs to be broken down, but I'm not too sure how to get there.
Well, let's establish like the modern whiskey geek who's watching this or listening to this, who reads books on this. Everyone has become very good at critiquing spirits for their own palate and in conversation on Reddit, on Facebook, on Twitter or X, wherever, at hanging out with friends. It's a constant conversation, and it does not matter the level you're at. You can always say, you know what, I'd like to see what it would be like in a couple more years in the barrel. You know what, I'd like to see it about 10 points proof higher. Another thing, there's age statements, and then we have the whole cask strength phenomenon, which all the best whiskeys are coming out of cask strength now because the distillers are putting their best whiskey in cask strength bottles. And they're also trying to squeeze in some of their crappy barrels into the cask strength bottles. But the thing is like everybody wants cask strength. Everybody wants 10, 12 years old. And when it does not meet those marks for the majority of us, then it's like, well, I'd like to see a little higher proof. I'd like to see what that'd be like. Oh, I'd like to see a little older. That's just the world we're in now. We're all critics.
Well, I think there's something to it. Yes, we're all critics, but maybe the people that listen to this podcast and follow it, and people that follow all of our channels and buy from Sealbox, we've all been groomed to think a certain way versus the majority of buyers that are out there. And let's try to kind of put it back on the rails a little bit. If you are a whiskey geek, in the way that I kind of look at it, I would say 5 years and below, you put an age statement on there, kind of a death blow, because most people look at it and they're like, well, I see stuff that has the 10 and 12 and whatever. I'm not doing this. It's a immediate turnoff. Now, I think was it Rebel that came out and had 6 on theirs, or maybe it still does, or something like that. 6 is kind of like the tipping point.
Remus just came out with a 6-year age stated.
Yeah, I kind of think 6 is like the tipping point, right? Like you could put an age statement on it. 7 for sure. Like why 7? why the hell not? It's a lucky number. 7 you see kind of everywhere, and I think like the number 7 just has some sort of connotation. And I mean, hell, you see brands like Lucky 7. I'm pretty sure that brand is able to latch on to people thinking that the product is 7 years old, even though it's not. So when you think about, there you go. Thank you, CH. Somebody validated me. Rebel does have a 6 on it now. And so one of the things that you do see is that you kind of see that tipping point. So I don't know, in your opinions, like when is that right time to start putting an age statement on a bottle that people will maybe pay more attention to it? I think we've all kind of come to an agreement that it does carry weight. How much weight is going to be equated to how many dollars are you going to spend now based on that age statement being on there. And I think it'd be interesting to see that if it was a 7-year-old bourbon, but non-age dated, would you pay the same exact amount of money if it was an age dated bourbon?
I still think you got to wait till the 8, 9. I mean, there's a few 7 examples, obviously, and some 6s too. But for your question, if you've got 2 bottles next to each other, one's got a 6 and one doesn't have anything, the 6 could sell for $50 more, depending on if it has a fancy horse on it or something.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it come in a box?
Equation.
Or, yeah. Is there a wooden box involved?
Tubes, boxes,
whatever
topsers.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a fair question.
But like one of the fastest growing brands, Penelope, I mean, this year they came out with a 9-year. They've had a 15-year light whiskey, but every other SKU is a non-age stated product on the market, and no one seems to care, with that brand. And so that's
But they also weren't pricing things at I don't think they had a single bottle over $100, which kind of lends to being non-age stated.
I don't know about that. I mean, I wouldn't to be able to say that if it's over $100, you have to put an age statement on. I saw somebody in the chat that said you had to do that, but even if you're under 100, I mean, there's still plenty of bottles under 100 that do have that.
Kentucky Owl sold tons non-age stated at over $100, even in Dixon's days, and now they're 300. But
yeah,
I kind of be an outlier. I would agree with the more expensive, the more I want to know about the bottle. If I had $60 a bottle and I don't know every detail, fine, I may still give it a shot. But if I'm spending $100, yeah, I do kind of want to know the age statement. I would say it's not, obviously I bought $100 bottles that I did not know everything about, but I would start to lean more into that of like, hey, if I'm going to spend $100 and the bottle looks cool, I want to at least know how old the whiskey is or where it came from. But that could just be my opinion.
I mean, there's another good question right here. I mean, let's take Dixon's new brand 2XO. It's about $100, not an age statement on the bottle, right?
So I was going to throw in there too. What about the big brands? Kind of what Fred was saying a few minutes ago, like Maker's Mark and then Jack Daniel's. We got major brands selling a stupid amount of whiskey over the years, in every store with no age statement. And then now they're more recently expanding, trying to get a more premium market. What do? They both come out with age state. Well, Maker's Mark's a little different, but Maker's Mark, finally did come out with that older release. And then, just today, Jack Daniel's announces the new batches of Jack Daniel's 10 and 12 year. It's why we're paying attention to them all of a sudden more than we probably would ever be.
Well, Jack Daniel's definitely started to, that's quote unquote their innovation is finally releasing age dated whiskeys. I'd hardly call it really innovation. The fact that they're just digging in and basically just kind of figuring a way to spin marketing and find the whiskey geeks and the consumers out there that are chasing that particular kind of expression. But
well, I will say their processes put so much before the barrel that they really. I do think that 10-year. Focusing on trying to get a 10-year product out of there is a little bit more work than it may sound because of their charcoal mellowing process. kind of makes that whiskey pop at 6 years old. And so I feel like in order for it to not get over oaked, that they do have to be a little bit more precise and on top of those barrels.
And it's hot as hell down there too.
It's so hot. So hot.
So the other kind of question I'll throw at you. So you see some of the age statements that come out and kind of the psyche that goes into the people that chase them. And I think the Old Fitz decanters is a really good way to kind of look at this. You have 17 and 19-year releases, and then you have 8 and 10. And it seems like the 8 and 10 people don't care about, even though it's really, really good. And is this just going back into the idea that like, oh, I'm buying it because age equates to this, equates to value, equates to secondary release? I mean, is it really just going to be about the flavor in general? What are y'all's thoughts?
I think humans just like higher numbers, no matter what it is.
Okay.
I mean,
we see the Powerball go up and the Mega Millions. We're like, absolutely, keep climbing.
It's just high age statements, high proof. You know, you like your salary to be higher. You like everything to be higher. But it is fascinating because there is, you know, the distilling methods and aging methods of today are totally different from even 15 to 20 years ago. I mean, you got research from Independent Stave that is like unbelievable, and they know exactly how to toast char and season barrels to get the X flavor out of at this age and that age. And you know, there's so many variables, as I talked about before, that I get it. Humans, like, our brains are trained to like we don't want too much information. We want to be able to make decisions easy, and an age statement and high proof is like an easy way for us to just be like, okay, well, that means it's good and it's worth that. So it's like it's a simplification thing for our minds to be like, okay, I don't have to think about all your different chars or this or that or your distilling methods, or I don't care about your grains and whatnot. But an age statement and they're just a way to simplify it for a consumer that, oh, 9 times out of 10, if it's this age, I feel like it's going to be pretty good. I don't even know if that answered your question. It was just a thought ahead.
Well, I feel like that's a good point, though, is like as most consumers, we just want one thing that tells us yes or no, this is good. And an age statement is that, and a price is that, where it's, hey, this is $100. This is a $200 bottle. It must be good. And, you know, we correlate quality and price all the time. We correlate age statement in quality all the time. And so I do think it is. It's that one thing we can look to say like, well, it's got to be pretty good. It's 10 years old. So that probably plays a bigger role than we like to think at the end of the day.
That's why you see Sealbox coming out with all these 9 and 10-year-olds.
Oh, don't forget the 15. Don't forget the 15-year-old.
It's coming.
I'll say
17 in June.
Oh, nice. I can't wait. Actually, I've been sitting that as gifts. But one thing I will say is, like, I was thinking about the number of 10-year-old blind tastings or private events I've done with specifically 10-year-old product out. You know, Michter's 10, Russell's 10, Henry McKenna. I've done a lot of those in my career. And the reason why is people do understand it. There's all kinds of back and forth. Well, what's your favorite 10-year-old bourbon? So I just, age statements matter because they do simplify it in a way, but I think it also just matters. The quality can be better at certain ages. And I would love to see age statements on everything. I really would. I would like to see the mash bill on there. I would like to see like an index card on the back of instead of the damn stories. Give me an index card of every single step of the process. And you know what? Some brands are doing that stuff now. It's awesome. But you know, to Ryan's point, it's a basic thing that we can all gravitate toward until someone like Michter says, well, it's actually not really 10 years old. It's 15, you know, so they do that sometimes because they can put older stocks in a 10-year-old age statement bottle. It just has to be the youngest in the batch. So it's just like, once you get to that level of getting into whiskey geekdom, you're like, this is all just all bullshit.
Well, they do a good job of somehow that trickles out. That information, I don't know where it comes from, but it shows in their product. I mean, I think a lot of us looked at Michter's 10-year this past year and we're just blown away by it. And even though it doesn't adorn a 15-year age statement or whatever, we all loved it.
So maybe it does mean something.
So maybe,
but I don't
who
know.
knows?
I'm drinking one of the.
You could have put non-age dated on it. I still would have
And
loved
it still would have been fantastic.
I'm
That's right.
drinking one of the best releases I've had in probably over the last 5-6 years. This Magnus Cigar Blend, no age statement, $200 bottle, fantastic.
I would counter that Cigar Blend replaced its age statement by like a 2-to-1 ratio in just because it says Cigar Blend. So like that trumps. Like if we're like having
That's equivalent of an age statement.
well, I would say it outranks it, especially with Magnus behind it. We should actually do a
I feel like we're doing like Pokemon cards.
Yeah,
but
we should
we're
do like what would
That should be a ranking. Amberana, cigar badge, age statements, barrel proof. Like what's more important?
Oh my God, this is a game. We got to create this game.
I think you're right. I do love that. There is one more question before we sign off there, and this is probably going to spark a little bit of a different conversation, but I really like it. So Brian from Abandoned Bourbon said, we don't know how old Coy Hill was, the Coy Hill release of Jack Daniels, but we all know that everybody loved it. Like it was a fantastic whiskey, and maybe because everything that came out was hazmat. It was 140 plus that came out. Maybe there was a 138 thrown in there, but either way, at what point do people care more about the proof rather than the age?
I think Old Forest Barrel Proof has proven this. I think all the Old Forester Barrel Proof single barrels are way too hot. Old Forester is perfectly proofed at 100 proof, but the consumers, I bet Barrel Proof gets picked 8 to 2, something like that on single barrel picks, because it's barrel proof.
4 to 1 if it's 8 to 2, but
whatever. I'm just.
I was teaching my kid this the other night.
And back when they did it to 94, some of the best single barrels I've ever had have been the Old Forester 94 proof single barrel selections. I mean, hands down, they're fantastic. And then you get a 133 proof one, and it's just torching you.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
think we
Kenny,
are
I had a point. Kenny, one more thing. I had a point. Kind of, it made me think of when you said the Old Fitzgerald with the Elijah Craig dropping the barrel proof age statement, and then doing a 13 last time for the last batch of 2023, and then what is it for the A24? It's like 10 years something.
Yeah,
Is that right? I mean, everybody's talking about the 13-year, and to Ryan's point, higher proof. Now we've got a younger, lower proof one, and I mean, people aren't paying attention to this one, at least initially. So I think people are kind of gravitating to both the age statement and the high proof as indicators of how great it is. And I know Eric and the Breaking folks loved the last one. I'm looking forward to the review of 24. You got it right now. Fantastic.
Yeah. Oddly enough, it's until Breaking Bourbon calls it their bourbon of the year, nobody's going to pay attention to it.
Well, fair enough.
I was just thinking over the
carries. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No, it's all right. Real quick, the ones I was thinking, like the bourbons, whiskeys, the ryes, we've given our highest ratings to. I could be wrong. One of them might not, but I think all of them aren't even barrel proofs.
Is there a reason behind that? I mean, is it an age statement, or is there something else behind it?
I mean, it's trying to think. I think all of them probably have age statements, but they're not barrel proof.
All right, Blake, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the hazmat side of things has really taken a life of its own as well. On top of, double digit age statements, if something is hazmat and or just crazy high proof, people are gonna go for it. I mean, we have people who at 120 proof, they'll be like, man, I wish it was a little bit higher. Like, really? Like, was your mouth not on fire before? Which, and we have I'll say that and kind of make fun of higher proof, but then we have a bourbon we're releasing tomorrow it's 148 proof, and it is incredible. And but I've also tasted some where it's older, higher proof, and is like rubbing alcohol. Like you get nothing but burn. But I think it's right up there with age statement as for what people look for these days.
All right, one last question to throw at you, only because I just thought of this, and it only brings me back to the time when we had Danny Kahn at my house when we were recording over there, and he brought some insane 12-year-old Barton picks that were anything from 140 to 162 proof. And for me, drinking 160 proof bourbon, it's a novelty. So at what point is this novelty to say like, "Ooh, I've got like this really high proof bourbon. I've got this really high age statement bourbon," where it's just novelty, but it's not really about the taste or the flavor.
You got to have that bottle. I've
I
got
think
a
that happens
bottle
all
of
the time.
Chardonnay. Yeah, I've got a 147 or 8 proof Chardonnay. That's my, trick pony that I bring out for somebody who's tasting something and they get all that hoppy marijuana flavor, and it's just a funny little trick.
I think I think the key is to it is can it hold up if you add water to it, and we're all different. I like cat. I feel like you can really taste a bourbon at its essence, its core, when it's straight out of the barrel. I just think that's the best way to taste. A lot of them are awful. I think it's such a great way, and the truly the perfect proof for me is 107 proof, and
Wrong.
sometimes
It's 108.
well,
I'm just messing. Keep going.
I know, but that's funny. That's funny. But it's such a company or brand dependent or distillery dependent style. Like Maker's Mark cash strength is like great. It's so much better than the regular stuff because Maker's Mark is so good out of the barrel. And it to
But
me,
why did they perform so poorly in your blind tasting?
that is a good question. But that would be the cellar aged one. They have won a couple when I've done some blind tasting.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, you said the cash strength. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
just the
Maker's cash strength is
the
amazing.
cash strength. The cellar age finishing. Well, I think it was like 84th or 87th. That was mind boggling. I couldn't believe it. And the other thing is like the top 15. There were 4 stags in there, so like that was the night for that style of whiskey. Anyway, my whole point is cash strength. Certain levels of cash strength are great. Like the companies like Wilderness Trail, Maker's Mark, Michter's, the ones that are going in lower barrel entry proofs, cash strength all day long. But those are coming out at 110. The ones that go up to 120 to 140, even 150. I mean, that's a barrel by barrel situation.
Yeah,
True.
the best
I think
cash
if you
strength
had your
bourbons. Oh, good.
if you had people over your house and you say, "Oh, what do you want to drink tonight? You want to drink, all hazmat, proof bourbons tonight, or do you want to drink all 20-year-old bourbons tonight?" I mean, what do you think people are going to choose?
First of all, no one's coming to my house anymore because my children have ransacked the place, and I can't have visitors over because one child will come out of the shower and be like trying to. I don't even want to talk about it, but it's like I can't have company anymore, Eric, and it depresses me. It really genuinely depresses me. But because of that, I would just drink hazmat and be like, listen, you're here with me. let's get through this night together. And no, I'm kidding. I would if I had like friends over, if I had Ryan over, I'd break out some Dusty stuff. I would go to an old Dusty and taste some history with my friends.
I'll
To
be
answer your
over.
question, I would probably go with age statements.
Yeah, if I had friends over, they would all choose the age statement.
Yep, me too. Same.
I guess another way to put that is I don't have friends.
You're talking to 5 of your best internet friends right now.
If you want to invite us to the Super Bowl, we could be friends.
Yeah, I mean,
We'd be good friends at the Super Bowl.
Dangling a
Right.
carrot.
Fred will drink all those 4-year Dusties, low proof Dusties. 4 years of
Oh,
low proof.
Gorgeous.
Not the modern consumer, but it goes back to Bernie Lebbers when I think his famous line is his dad said, "Don't trust a bourbon that's over 4 years old." When that's line, Kenny?
I don't know. We have to go back to the archives and really search on that one. But we'll let them fact check that one. But we are running to the top of this hour right now, and this was a really good conversation. I think it also sparked an idea for maybe potentially the next roundtable, looking at words and ranking them and figuring out what it would be like in our pyramid or our ladder about what do we think is most important when it comes to
like
us
the
as a
Trump, like
consumer.
you were saying, like the Pokemon, like Trump cards. I love it. Like what
Can
would
we-
be?
Can we do how to read labels? That would be good.
Ooh,
Why? Because you need a refresher or what?
No, I just want to educate people when
do we-
when produced
question
by
is-
and no state of distillation, what that means.
It just doesn't have a horse, and then you buy it.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that we can simplify this. And Brian, we can talk about how to read labels all you want, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because there's a few things that you can do in marketing that only care to the whiskey consumer. And so it doesn't, as much as we want to make sure we educate people, there's going to be a larger part of the population that are going to just sink into that marketing hole, and they're just going to sink their claws in, and that is what it is.
So, Brian, we should both advocate for this reading a label thing that Ryan brought up, because then we can start talking about the 1935 Federal Alcohol Administration Act and all the lobbying and things that went on. And you could talk about some of the lawsuits, and we can just kind of go back and forth with some of the Treasury reports that we've read.
And
Man,
look at the people in the chat just leaving. But yeah, I'm with you.
People don't realize like how fun that is for us, but
It is. I mean,
that's
I dig
fun.
in deep. Oh,
They're back. They're like back to age statements and high proofs.
Yeah.
Like
All right, here.
just like even going back to when they were describing barrel entry proof, that just like they didn't call it barrel entry proof. So and what they didn't call white dog. It was called singling, and just like all that stuff in the nomenclature of the federal government. That's so good. Thanks for bringing that up, Ryan. We're gonna have a good old time, Brian.
It'll be good.
So there is one more question, and we got to give it out to Dr. Patrick Heiss, who's been in the chat the entire time here. Would you rather drink a 6-year-old that was bottled in 1955 or a 20-year-old bottled in 2022?
1955 all day.
Yes, all day, every day.
Dusty. I'll take the Dusty.
1955.
Not even close. 1955.
It's a great
I love-
question, Dr. Pat.
Yeah, I know. That it was unanimous.
I now want to go the other direction. Since everybody said
Yeah, that was a pretty unanimous one. But again, you're talking to a bunch of bourbon geeks. Here's the thing. I'll try both of them if I have the chance.
That janitor at Wilderness Trail is pretty smart.
He sure is. I don't know if he's I think he's the lawn guy.
Was he
Long
saying
guy.
that was was that an invite for us to come over, or was that just a hypothetical question he was throwing
We're
out
coming
there?
over, Dr. Pat.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go ahead. Let's wrap it up, fellas. This is another good show. I'm glad. I kind of like these ones where we take one topic and just like really dive into it. I think this has been really fun because we get to really kind of look at all the different angles of it and really kind of dissect it as much as possible. And of course, Dr. Pat says open invite. So we'll see you there tomorrow night. But let's go ahead and we'll start closing it out. So make sure that if you are listening, you share this with a friend, you subscribe on our YouTube channel, you subscribe on any kind of podcasting app, share it with anybody, leave a review. And if you're going to leave a bad one, make sure it's worth it, because I read every single one of them. And then if not, share with a friend. That's the best way to kind of share this good knowledge as well. And also make sure you go to if you're in Vegas and you got a lot of money to burn, go check out our friend Fred over here. He's got a pretty good party going.
He's got a bunch of age-stated bourbons.
Yeah.
I do actually.
See? Perfect.
At Big Game Bourbon.
At Big Game Bourbon. All right, and then let's go ahead and let's round it out. So Blake, go ahead.
Yeah, Blake from Sealbox. Always fun to be here. And, just when I thought I was going to have a nice, good round table at my office, the sound goes down. So I think I'm going to head back to Disney for the next round of BCR. And yeah, looking forward to it. So thanks again for having me.
Love it. And Brian.
All right, Brian with Sip and Corn Bourbon Justice, and since we have the open invite, I formally say let's take Dr. Pat up on it. Next BCR is at Dr. Pat's house. We each bring a bottle of either a vintage or an age-stated bourbon, and we taste them blind and see who wins. Let's do it.
Ryan's bringing his Old Forester barrel-proof picks to see if he can fool anybody. All right, Eric, go ahead.
All right, I'm Eric from Breaking Bourbon, and during this episode tonight, I was drinking, where are we here? A Barterhouse 20-year 90 proof whiskey, just for the fun of it all. So if we all remember that whole thing, but it kind of goes along with the topic.
I was about to say, I was like, that was one of the first bottles that I ever chased down. Like we're talking like 2014 time frame, something like that. 2015 when that came out.
2014, I think.
Yeah, at least the first original release. So yeah, I totally remember that one. But good call on that one. It's one of those age-dated ones that was like, all right, sounds good. On to the next
big
one.
Old weird story that you believed if you wanted to, but yeah.
Totally. All right, so make sure you follow all these guys on all their channels, but also make sure you again follow Bourbon Pursuit, follow Fred Minnick. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Toodles.
Cheers.
Vodka sucks.
All right. Now we can hang out for a minute until the first person wants to break, and then we have to close it.
And everybody hits record or
Everybody
download or whatever.
I was going to say, and that may be me.
You running?
Figured.
Big move tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow's the
we
house.
move tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you still in Jacksonville, or
are
are
at
you
mine.
finally moving to the promised land?
Yeah, moving to Kentucky. Here we go. Got a house right next door. You didn't realize
Oh,
the
that's who
neighbors are gonna
bought
be
it.
really
Oh,
confused.
shit.
Like, can you move into the house next door, or is that Blake?
It's the big one on the corner.
No,
Got it.
we're only moving a couple miles away, but yeah.
What was
Duval.
the idea of moving? Was it you or the wife?
It was
Oh
the kids.
yeah, no, we've been renting. We've been in a 1-year rental when the twins were born, and they turned 6 in April. So
Are you shitting me?
no.
You've been renting for that long?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, we just doubled down every time. Run it back, guys. Run it back. Yeah, but
They're probably
no,
sad to see you
finally,
leave.
Yeah, you've been the best renters and tenants for a long time.
yeah, I was gonna
The
say
best 1-year
we
rental
were
they
by
ever had.
far the best renters I think they could have ever had, because I don't care about anything for a house at least. And yeah, but no, it's good. We're excited. Kids are
Well,
excited. They have
congratulations.
friends on the street. So yeah, we will.
So it
We
all
will
worked
see,
out with the
but no-
seller. They were no longer confused.
I don't. Are we live still? Or
We still are, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
save that for later.
Yeah, I told Brian some funny stories. Great. It all worked out, but yeah, there were some funny stories.
Good. Glad it worked out.
Yeah, it. I'll repeat those later on, but
You moving next to John Rue?
yeah, no, I it's gonna take a little while to get to one of those. Well, maybe one of his mini homes. But although we are gonna be up there, I'll send you the dates. I think it's like the last week in February.
It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
My flight is
I've
at
gotten
6
so much-
a.m.
Yeah. I've gotten so much better about my travel. I give everybody like a 4 weeks heads up now. Even
Sure
my
have.
wife, she's like, "Man, this is on the calendar."
It's good for you.
Oh man, yeah.
Just
So
you growing up.
speaking of moving and renovations, Kenny, what are you doing now? You're the general contractor. What are you doing?
Oh, I demoed out the bathroom in the warehouse today, and
He's
so
fast. In the time it took me to taste their 10 barrels, dump them, and blend them, he redid our bathroom.
Wow.
but I got the cuts to prove it. But
And he redid
yeah.
it, or the general contractor did. Yeah.
oh no, you're looking at the guy. It's like
No more soft hands. Kenny's got
oh,
calluses.
I'm calloused up, man.
You've missed
I
your
got
calling.
I got it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is like I'm not scared. Like I like doing housework, remodeling, construction because it's immediate satisfaction. Like as soon as you put something on the wall, you put a paint color on the wall, it changes it right away, so you know what it looks like. Like I don't know, I've always enjoyed it, and so that's what. So I demoed it out today. I did drywall work on it to make smooth walls again. So I was kind of skim coating some of the walls to make sure we had not a bunch of uneven patches and got rid of a bunch of holes. And Ryan can attest. I don't know. I'm trying to Blake on mute. It's
Yeah.
hard to
mute
hear.
him.
But the
Oh, I can
mirror
turn that
was,
off too. What'd you say?
the mirror that was on the wall. I don't know how they get it on and off. I mean, it's like I spent probably 45 minutes trying to figure out how to get a mirror off the wall, and I couldn't.
Yeah, because you don't want to break it. I mean,
I had to. I couldn't do it. I mean, I seriously, I
Oh,
spent
no.
45 minutes trying to pry
I see
a
a
mirror off the wall.
13-year pursuit spirits coming out.
Oh, dude. I mean, I was looking, I was like, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But after 45 minutes, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I didn't just take in a crowbar, hitting the mirror, and then just taking out the pieces and taking it off the wall. It literally had 6 drywall anchors behind it, held to it, but I couldn't actually get behind it to pull the mirror off the wall. So
I went in there for
You're like, is this
30
mirror a part of the foundation of the building or something? What's
you
I
ever
went in there
watched
for 30 seconds and was like, all right, Kenny, I'm sorry. I'm going back to the blending. Good luck.
Do you ever remember The Office, watching that when Jim
Never seen
buys the house for Pam and they go through there and that there's
apparently
that clown?
this clown picture is a part of the
It's exactly what it was like. So I was like, there's no way this thing's ever coming off. So yeah, had to do that. Skim coat the walls. Tomorrow's painting, and then I'll have the fixtures, the toilet, and the vanity in by Wednesday.
Lord,
Fingers crossed.
you're gonna have most calluses of the roundtable.
Well, I'm the one putting in all the construction work, but I like it. So, but I got to have somebody like Ryan there to sit there and blend barrels and make it taste good, because I'd just be throwing shit against the wall and see what sticks.
That's what I'm here for, Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to get up at 3. So
3.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's close it. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on the live
Cheers.
stream. We'll catch you in a month. Cheers.
Toodles.